Chapter 334. In contrast, the one who was the most frightened was Mei Yi, not only because of this bloody scene. After all, for a person like Mei Yi, even if she had experienced wind and waves, her life was full of ups and downs, thorns and thorns. Whether she was determined or ruthless, it did not mean that she could calmly face this kind of bloody scene. Also, originally, in order to prevent accidents, all the people on the pavilion boat still had an assassination. If it was not her subordinates, she could reluctantly not pursue the matter, but now how could she escape responsibility? After returning to her senses, Mei Yi quickly knelt on the ground. Compared to the shock brought by the bloody scene, she was more frightened now. Her body could not stop trembling. Wang, slave? Li Hongyuan did not pay attention to her at all. Right now he had to appease his wife. Well, Jingwan was actually not as serious as she imagined. No matter how big the stimulation was, it probably could not compare to the first time she saw Li Hongyuan slit people's throats like the god of death. She did not see the scene just now, so the stimulation could not be considered. It just affected her mood. She just loved to surf the internet. Jingwan patted Li Hongyuan's hand and leaned back. We will investigate this matter clearly. As long as it is confirmed that it has nothing to do with the owner of the boat, we will not make things difficult for the owner. You can cut it up. Mei Yi cautiously glanced at Jingwan. Seeing Jin Wangye's indifferent attitude, she slowly stood up, but her legs were still a little soft. Her mood was not good, so naturally she was not in the mood to do anything. Li Hongyuan put his hand on Jingwan's abdomen. Are you hungry? Let people go back and get some food? Jingwan shook her head. She was not hungry, but now she felt that there was a little bloody smell in the air. She did not have much appetite. Looking at the performance outside, she was a little absent-minded. Things will not end like this, right? If the assassination that she had painstakingly arranged was only of this level, she would be a little disappointed. But you can rest assured that they will not appear in front of us again. It was a dereliction of duty on the part of the inspector below to allow someone to get close to him and even hide a dagger. This kind of thing happened once, but it would never happen again. However, under normal circumstances, dereliction of duty should not exist. The people below really needed to be taught a lesson. With the current situation, Jingwan did not want to return home. Obviously, someone must have some plan. Perhaps he was also using this opportunity to fish. In fact, it was just as expected. While it was lively on the surface, a bloody battle had already begun in the dark. It was like trying to sink a pleasure boat, but before they could even get close, they had already encountered a powerful counterattack. The blood mixed together with the river water in the dark. Perhaps it was because it didn't cause any disturbances at all, so it tried to cause a disturbance in the crowd outside. However, the result was also silently eliminated. In the crowd, people on other pleasure boats were all dragged into the water. As for those in the water, as long as they were in the vicinity of Linchuan River, none of them were spared. Fortunately, it was night, and most people were attracted by the wonderful performance of the 100-boat ferry. If it was in broad daylight, it would definitely cause a big disturbance. Of course, it was impossible that no one noticed this. At least, the mastermind behind this murder was abnormally anxious after waiting for a long time without any good news. When he heard the hurried footsteps, he immediately became like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. After confirming that it was him, he slightly heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly went up to greet. How is it? The other party's face was pale, trembling as he spoke. Dead. Not one of them came back. They were almost scared out of their wits by this news. Go quickly, leave this place immediately. However, when they turned around, they found that the Grim Reaper was already standing in front of them. They were like hungry wolves, and without any room to resist, they were taken down. And these people, there was only one word left in their hearts. It's over. They probably couldn't imagine how they would be defeated so quickly and so thoroughly. It was as if all their plans were right under the other party's nose, and there was also an indescribable fear. Although this was the first time they participated in the assassination of the Li family's royal family, they had heard a lot about this from their seniors. In the past 100 years, although there were times when they lost, there were more times when they won. It was how they tortured and killed the royal family's people, how they stirred up the royal family's fowls and dogs, and how they wrote down their brilliant achievements everywhere. Every time they heard about it, their blood boiled, and they wished they could personally experience it a few times. They really participated in it. Speaking of which, in the past 100 years, the so-called previous dynasty had completely become history. The reason why these people were still addicted to it and couldn't extricate themselves was largely based on 2 points. It was that group of rotten loaches that robbed them of their glory and wealth. They, the lowly people, could trample on the royal family and make the royal family fear them. The previous generation's brainwashing of the next generation basically started from this. Today's reality, however, gave them a fierce slap in the face. An quietly boarded the pleasure boat. "Master, the matter has been settled." Li Hongyuan responded indifferently. "Is it over?" Jingwan leaned on Li Hongyuan and asked softly. "And it's over." Li Hongyuan gently stroked her hair. "It smells like blood." Jingwan's nose twitched. "Is that so? Then we'll go back?" "I don't care for a while. Boat owner, it should be over soon." Replying to young master, "It will be over in about a quarter of an hour." Aunt May immediately responded. Jingwan nodded. "It was only half an hour. Let's go back after we finish reading." "As you wish." https://11/1180/6653828. Chapter 335. The last round of flower boats and pleasure boats paraded. In the water behind them, little lanterns lit up as if they were placed as they glided. Compared to the Mid-Autumn Festival, there were 2 to 3 times more lanterns. The distance between them was also long enough. There was no world of lights on either side of the river. Because the pleasure boats gradually extinguished their own lanterns after they placed the lanterns on the river, the lanterns in the river were particularly conspicuous. In that instant, it made people feel that there was a Milky Way. Jingwan couldn't help but lean forward, lying on the windowsill. She watched for a while. "So beautiful," she softly said. "And it's very beautiful." Li Hongyuan approved. His fingers twined around the ends of her hair, twirling it around and around. Soon after, the Wanhua Terrace's opened wall closed one by one until it was restored to its original state. The lights inside were extinguished, officially announcing the end of this 100-boat crossing. Perhaps because of this last Milky Way, Jingwan's mood improved a lot. "Wangye, let's go back." "Okay." Without needing to give any instructions, Mu Gonggong hurriedly went to arrange it. Jin Qinhuang's pleasure boat started to move, returning home. The others naturally also made their preparations one after another, waiting for Jin Qinhuang to leave before they could move. As for whether they were going home or if they were seduced by these little goblins, until they lost their souls and prepared to spend the night in the dark, it was unknown. However, tonight, the 12 leading families' physical exhaustion was not small. As long as the procuress wasn't deranged, they shouldn't be allowed to continue to accompany the guests. Speaking of which, even if this 100-boat crossing was over, it still left many people wanting to continue. The one that was mentioned the most was, of course, morning break. It was just that, from the mouths of these men, it was definitely difficult to look at her with pure appreciation. No matter how they looked on the surface, their hearts were as filthy as they could be. Wait until the marriage ceremony, I'm afraid her value will rise again, right? What marriage ceremony? Let's wait and see. Who knows, she might be sent to Jin Qinhuang tonight. These words are reasonable. Many people expressed their agreement. Speaking of which, the date that Jin Qinhuang picked is too coincidental. If it was one day later, at least there would be one person, ha ha ha. The others also laughed strangely. Although these people felt a little regretful, that was all. After all, they definitely couldn't by daybreak's first night. Suddenly, someone's dead. But all the silence ended there. Naturally, more and more anomalies were discovered. Then the color of the river changed. Without a doubt, it was also discovered by the light of the lanterns. One must know that everything was fine before nightfall. Even an idiot would know that something big had happened. One must know that more than one corpse had been discovered. With the color of the water, who knew how many more there were in the river? Go quickly, hurry, hurry. Incessant urging voices rose and fell. They only wanted to leave this damned place as soon as possible. As for the romance, it had long been thrown beyond the 9 heavens. Now they only wanted to go home and calm down. However, the hands and feet of the experts who usually rowed the boats didn't seem to listen to their orders. Moreover, they were all in a hurry to leave. Naturally, it became more chaotic. No matter if it was a private boat or a variety of pleasure boats, they all collided with each other. Naturally, curses rose one after another. That scene was really, even the courageous ones would tremble at this time. The timid ones couldn't even stand steadily. They were so scared that they peed and cried for their parents to go home. Jingwan and the others hadn't traveled far and naturally heard the commotion behind them. Although they couldn't hear clearly, they basically knew what had happened. How many people? Even though she knew that it was best not to ask, Jingwan still couldn't stop herself from asking. The question was a little specious. Li Hongyuan still knew what she was asking. He stared at Jingwan for a moment and saw that there was only calmness in her eyes. More than 100. In fact, including those who were captured alive, there were more than 200 people. In order to take his life, this was not a small amount. If it was really just the people on the surface, the other party would definitely succeed. Jingwan slightly sucked in a breath of cold air. What about our people? How are the casualties? Wang? Young master, don't worry. Because we have already made arrangements, we have enough people. Only a few of our people were slightly injured. It's not a big problem. And he respectfully said. That's good. Don't be stingy with the medicine. Let them recover as soon as possible. As for the others, more than 100 dead people were deliberately left in the river. What kind of panic would it cause and how uneasy the officials of the entire Chuanzhou prefecture would be? Jingwan didn't mention a word. It was those people who wanted her husband's life. No matter how many of these people died, she couldn't have the slightest bit of sympathy or pity. As for those officials who escaped from her husband's evil claws, those frightened commoners behind them, Jingwan's heart didn't have any waves, but Aunt May's heart couldn't be relaxed. Her heart was thumping wildly and she even felt that she might suddenly die in the next moment. Even so, she still had to force herself to stay alert until Jingwan and the others were sent off the boat. At this time, the entire boat except for her, there were only people holding the boat. There wasn't a single person serving her. It made the boat seem especially large and empty. Thinking of more than 100 dead people, although they weren't under her feet, they were in the same river and weren't too far apart. In the darkness, there was a ghostly aura, as if the entire boat would be swallowed up in the next moment. How could it not make people panic? Aunt May couldn't hold on any longer. She softly leaned on the short table. Go back, quickly. Although the people holding the boat were also affected, but they weren't at the center of the incident. At least they could still use their hands. Aunt May returned to the pavilion boat and slightly recovered. After resting, she remembered the assassination attempt on the boat and hurriedly called for the people left in the building to inquire if anyone had come to the building to investigate. Li Su Yin had indeed brought people to investigate. The facts proved that 2 of the servant girls on the pavilion boat had been replaced. Because it was dark and because of the nobles in front of them, they all lowered their heads. Therefore, they didn't notice that the 2 servant girls in the building didn't lose their lives and had already been sent back. Aunt May breathed a sigh of relief. This could be considered a blessing in the misfortune. Give the 2 little girls some silver as reward. Consider it as suppressing the shock. Rest for 2 more days. Yes. Presumably you all know what happened at Wanhua Terrace. Pass down the words. No one on the pavilion boat is allowed to talk about this matter. If I know about it, be careful of your skin. Aunt May sternly said. This matter was obviously the work of Jin Qinhuang's subordinates. And the people who died were clearly the same as the 2 in the boat. Assassinating the current Qinhuang was simply eating a bear's heart and leopard's guts. However, the 100-boat ferry was led by her pavilion boat. If Jin Qinhuang didn't vent his anger, then she should be low-key and restrained. Otherwise, when the time comes, it would be her own doing. After dealing with this matter, although Aunt May felt tired, she didn't feel sleepy at all. Thinking about it, she decided to go see Daybreak. The other girls on the pavilion boat were all quite tired, but Daybreak was very calm. She ordered people to prepare warm water and bathed and changed clothes. It seemed no different from before. In the past, Daybreak was a bit special, but that special was within the range of people's tolerance. Who let her be the lead? Those special things should be enjoyed by her. But the special things now were different. She could still remain calm in that kind of matter. It was inevitable that people would feel strange. When she came back, even though they knew that she might have a meteoric rise, there were still people who walked around her. The lights in the room were still on. Aunt May knocked on the door. After waiting for a moment, Daybreak personally opened the door. Aunt May frowned. Where are the people around you? They were frightened. Their hands and feet are stiff from pouring a cup of water, so I let them go back and rest. Daybreak personally poured tea for Aunt May. Aunt May came back now. Is there something else? Nothing, just looking at you. Aunt May carefully sized her up. Her eyebrows were as calm and peaceful as before. Her expression was natural, as if she didn't know what had happened. Aunt May's heart couldn't help but feel strange. Daybreak, you don't know what happened in front of Wanhua Tai? Daybreak naturally understood what Aunt May was talking about. I know. Not only did she know, she had already noticed the abnormality in the river when she released the little flower lantern. The blood mixed in the water. Even though the smell had been diluted, it still didn't escape her nose. Blood pool, mud, whales everywhere, starving people all over the mountain. What haven't I seen before? I only heard that someone died and the river was dyed red. So what? I haven't even seen the corpse. What is there to be afraid of? Daybreak's voice was light. Aunt May was moved. She knew that Daybreak had been through a lot. In reality, many people in their line of work had their own stories. But what Daybreak had experienced was still shocking. She had never heard her talk about it before, so she didn't know what to say now. Aunt May doesn't need to worry about me. But Aunt May has been busy since yesterday and hasn't had a moment of rest. Today you have been by noble lady's side, so you must be tired. Go back and rest early. There are many things in and out of this building that Aunt May needs to take care of, so you should take care of yourself. But Aunt May didn't leave. Everyone knows my own situation. You were in the limelight today. But I didn't know that everything was the will of Jean Wang Fei. I should have listened to you yesterday otherwise. It doesn't matter. Aunt May did it for me, I know. Jean Wang is a noble descendant, but he has deep feelings for Jean Wang Fei. Jean Wang Fei's eyebrows are clear and upright, and she is kind on the inside. She is also infatuated with Jean Wang. This kind of loving husband and wife is rare and valuable, and shouldn't be ruined by others. Daybreak's mood rarely fluctuated. Even if she needed to greet and send people off, she would only wear a smile on her face and be calm on the inside. At this moment, Aunt May rarely heard a trace of envy in her tone, but there was no jealousy. She probably also didn't yearn for it because she knew it was impossible and she didn't want to get involved in this kind of husband and wife. To their line of work, Daybreak was definitely different. Perhaps there were people who disdained her and thought that she was putting on an act. Perhaps there were people who scolded her for putting up a memorial arch. There were also people who were jealous and hated her. Everyone was dirty inside and out, but only you maintained a clean inside. It made people want to destroy you, dirty you, and drag you down with them. Aunt May had the latter kind of thoughts, but she also wanted to protect her. It was a contradiction. But now she didn't mock her. You, rest B.A. And Aunt May also rest early when you go back. Aunt May nodded and left. In the end, what she wanted to say wasn't actually this. She wanted to tell her that the marriage ceremony wouldn't be delayed for more than a few days. As long as she didn't make any move to send her to Jean Wang within 3 days, someone would come knocking. But even if she said it, she wouldn't have any reaction. Although her mood was a little bad a few days ago, in reality she had already prepared herself. It wasn't that Aunt May had never seen someone who was calm, but she was very clear that the reason for Daybreak's calmness was different from other people. Moreover, this reason couldn't be asked. At the same time, all the officials in the Chuanzhou Institute were alarmed. The relevant personnel naturally crawled out of their beds and rushed to the scene without putting on their clothes properly. The unrelated personnel also stayed up all night and anxiously went to find out the specific details. They all knew that Jean Wang had booked the pleasure boat today. On the Linchuan River, they didn't have the guts to join in the fun. They were afraid that Jean Wang wouldn't be able to stand it and would suffer a calamity. In the end, they still couldn't escape this calamity. The officials held torches and sealed off the scene. The prefectural governor also personally came to the scene, trembling as he watched people salvage the corpses. The flow of Linchuan River was very slow. In this short period of time, the corpses were basically still in place. One by one they were salvaged. To a certain extent, it could be said that it was quite crowded. One moment, it made people's hearts tremble. How could there be so many? Haven't they all been salvaged yet? The coroner had been examining from the beginning and the results were basically the same. That was, the vital points were injured by a sharp blade. Most of them were fatal with one blow. There were only a handful of people who had more than 3 wounds on their body. In the end, it was confirmed that the river was clean. After a careful count, there were 192 corpses. Looking at the attire of these people, even if one used their toes to think, they would know what was going on. It was over. So many people tried to assassinate Jean Wang. Even if he escaped this calamity, this matter was destined to not be able to protect his official position. The data had just been tallied. Not long after, the other officials basically knew the result. It was almost the same 2 words, it's over. And these people were really done for, not just because of this matter. However, even if it was like this, they couldn't be derelict in their duties and not do anything. Those who were still holed up at home hurriedly came out. At this time, they didn't care about what faction they belonged to, didn't care about whether they were responsible for this matter, and also didn't care if they were opponents. They just needed to discuss a grand plan together to minimize the possible serious consequences of this matter. Overnight, they found more than a dozen painters to draw everyone's faces. With so many people, it was impossible for all of them to be unfamiliar faces. Under normal circumstances, only merchants were more mobile, and the more large-scale caravans would have records of their movements. It was just purely unfamiliar faces entering the city. One or two was still okay, but it was impossible for nearly 200 people to not be noticed at all. It must be known that the people who had been guarding the gates for a long time were not vegetarians. As long as these people didn't suddenly pop up, if they searched the entire city, they would be able to find people who knew them. Even if it was only a small portion, they would follow the vine to the melon. In the end, it would be up to the heavens to what extent they could achieve. After Jingwan and the others returned, they had the kitchen prepare light and simple food. Almost 70% full, they sat down, took a bath and rested. It was a good night's sleep. Compared to many people who couldn't sleep at night, it was simply too comfortable. The next day, just as they got up and finished breakfast, they heard from Eunuch Mu that the officials outside had been waiting for a long time and wanted to see their master. Tell them to come to this prince if they have any results. If they can't find anything, tell them to wash their necks for this prince. With Li Hongyuan's words, there was nothing more to say. They hurried to do the work. Countless copies of the portraits were made. All the people in the patrol office and the city guards were pulled out. These were still not enough. They even pulled out 2,000 prefectural soldiers from the barracks. The city gates that were closed last night were not opened at all. They went door to door and asked everyone to look at the portraits one by one. It was troublesome, and at the same time, it was possible to increase efficiency. Because they didn't know what happened, the people in the entire prefectural city were in a state of panic. At the same time, they were unusually cooperative. As a result, it didn't take long for there to be news. Once they found one person, they could basically implicate a lot of people. And a small number of these people had family members. There was no doubt that whether these people knew the truth or not, they wouldn't have a good ending. The old and the young all had the same ending. As long as it involved the remnants of the previous dynasty, they would rather kill the wrong person than let them go. When it came to Jingwan, she wouldn't say a word. When Jin Qinhuang was watching the 100 Boats ferry, he was met with an assassination attempt. The other 11 families would certainly not end up well. Under normal circumstances, even if it had nothing to do with them, there was a 90% chance that they would be involved. Fortunately, Jingwan thought of this and sent people to greet them. Therefore, when these officials took the opportunity to be unreasonable and brought out Jin Qinhuang's name, each and every one of them could only act according to the rules and didn't dare to be presumptuous. Things went far smoother than expected. Although half of the people were, to some extent, visiting relatives and friends, and staying at a friend's house. In the evening, the officials pulled themselves together and asked for an audience with Jin Qinhuang. Li Hongyuan didn't give them the cold shoulder. Because he roughly knew he didn't make things difficult for them. Alright, Ben Wang won't pursue this matter. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. There was a feeling of coming back to life. Since Jin Qinhuang was unharmed and didn't pursue the matter, in addition to the special identity of the assassin, the emperor shouldn't punish them too harshly. However, this sigh of relief hadn't been completely relaxed when Jin Qinhuang started to release thunder again. Let's consider another matter. The people who were transferred over after the earthquake in Minshan County 3 years ago can scram. Those who didn't understand naturally looked left and right and then respectfully retreated. However, those who knew, no matter how good their attitude was, they couldn't help but change their expression. What was called falling from the clouds into the dust, this was it. Li Hongyuan picked up the teacup and leisurely took a sip. Then he looked at them with a lazy expression. His eyes weren't necessarily sharp, but they somewhat couldn't bear it. When the time was almost right, Li Hongyuan opened his mouth again. Say it yourself, your family members will at most be exiled. If the situation is better, you'll lose your family property, but you can return to your ancestral home in one piece. After 3 generations, there will be a chance to rise again. Wait for Ben Wang to say, the light punishment is that the women will be demoted to slaves and sent to the musical house. The men will all be stripped of their chastity and become the lowest servants. The heavy punishment is that the whole family will be executed. Don't cry injustice to Ben Wang and don't tell Ben Wang that you don't know. Of course, if you have a fluke in your heart and want to test whether Ben Wang has evidence in his hands, you can speak without thinking. Come, invite the officials to leave and let them think carefully. Ben Wang doesn't mind waiting for one more night. Without giving them a chance to speak, they were all taken away. Each person was given a room. They only had one night. When Jingwan found out about this, she couldn't help but be impressed. This psychological warfare was really not an ordinary kind of smooth play. In fact, there wasn't much evidence in this matter. Those who were involved in this matter at the beginning knew the seriousness of the matter, so they cleaned up the matter very well. Of course, it was not impossible to investigate, such as investigating the whereabouts of tens of thousands of people, but it was too troublesome. Li Hongyuan didn't have time for that. Even if they suspected that he was cheating, they didn't dare to gamble. This night, some people had a much more painful night than the previous one. In the morning, Li Hongyuan was in a good mood for morning practice. He saw his wife practicing in the morning, only wearing a doo-doo and underwear. Her snow-white skin was moist and she was sweating. In addition, Jingwan grew quickly during this period of time. Her appearance was very seductive. However, Jingwan was ignorant. She was focused on practicing yoga, and her figure was stretched to the extreme. Li Hongyuan's eyes became deeper and deeper. He didn't even hide the changes in his body. He didn't disturb Jingwan but waited. When she finished practicing, Jingwan got up, adjusted her breathing and then smiled at Li Hongyuan. In the next moment, her smile was a little stiff. This bastard was sitting so casually. That place couldn't be too obvious. And that gaze, what did it mean? It was like he wanted to eat someone. Jingwan looked around. When did the servants go out? There was no master and servant relationship at all. Yuan, sit for a while. I'll go wash up and then we'll have breakfast together. She greased the soles of her feet and prepared to escape. But who was Li Hongyuan? He was a wolf whose eyes were green with hunger. How could he let the fat little lamb run away? As if he knew Jingwan's escape route, he intercepted her halfway. Instead of gently carrying her in a princess carry, he carried her rather rudely. Jingwan exclaimed, "Bastard." In exchange, she received 2 slaps on her butt. It didn't hurt, but it was dyed with a very thick color. He even rubbed it twice. Jingwan gritted her teeth. She wanted to bite someone, but she was sure that this bite would definitely make someone's arrogance rise. It wasn't like this hadn't happened before. Yuan, I'm sweating all over." Li Hongyuan put Jingwan on the bed and leaned over. "Why is it sweating? My little heart is the most fragrant. I'm hungry." "Okay, this husband will feed you right away." Li Hongyuan unceremoniously started to nibble. As a result, the Darren who were locked up to reflect on their actions clenched their fists and made a decision. However, after waiting for a long time, they still didn't see Jin Qinhuang's shadow. This made their hearts more and more uneasy. When the sun was high in the sky, Jin Qinhuang finally interrogated them. Each and every one of their eyes were already bloodshot. Li Hongyuan interrogated them one by one. He didn't even need to ask. He had already cleaned them up. The ones behind didn't dare to hide anything. They didn't dare to gamble. What's more, who knew if the people in front had already exposed them? https://11/118076653835. Chapter 336. Regarding this, Li Hongyuan's expression was indifferent. First, he appeased his wife and everything else stood aside. Mobile network Jingwan also calmed down very quickly. She closed her eyes and took 2 deep breaths, regaining her composure. But there was an indescribable coldness in her eyes. "How did you deal with it?" "All the officials involved in Chuanzhou have been imprisoned. The others have also been arrested. Don't worry, even if they were transferred away, even if they are officials in the capital, they will absolutely not be able to escape." "That's good. Letting these heartless people escape, the heavens really have no eyes." Jingwan didn't know that in her husband's previous life, this big case of inhumanity caused by greed had never been exposed. The heavens really had no eyes. Tens of thousands of lives died so silently. The blackguard was dispatched. The family members of the officials involved, regardless of whether they were masters or slaves, were all arrested. The houses of the masters were also sealed. During this process there were naturally people who resisted. But who were the blackguard? They were a group of cold-faced killing gods. Even the old, weak women and children would not be merciful. When their heads were broken and bleeding, they did not dare to act shamelessly. They wailed and trembled as they supported each other. "Old foreign, what is going on? There is no news at all. They said to arrest people and they arrested people." Jin Qinhuang Fei clearly. "Shut up." The blackguard coldly pulled out his sword. Similar words were played out in the residences of the officials who were arrested. Because they did not know the exact reason, they only thought that it was a matter of salt policy. Thus, Jingwan became a typical example of taking money but not doing anything. With the blackguard present, they did not dare to curse out loud. But in their hearts, they cursed Jingwan from head to toe, from inside to outside, and all 8 generations of her ancestors. When they were all taken to the prison of the government office and met with the head of the family who took off their official hat and official robes, they could not help but collapse. Their tears were like broken beads. Laoi, what is going on? What is going on? Ah. They struggled forward to grab the seal of the prison cell, wanting to ask clearly. The others also followed and wailed. What are you howling for? Let's go. The saber hilt fell, but it did not recognize people. Seeing their pampered wives, their outstanding and smart children, and even their grandsons who were still in swaddling clothes at this moment, they could not help but burst into tears. They tried to grab the hands of their loved ones, but their loved ones were mercilessly pushed away. Perhaps they would be locked up in a damp, gloomy place where insects and rats ran rampant. How could they bear it? How could they bear it? Li Suyin held the saber on his waist and straightened his back. His face was cold. Do you regret it now? In the past 3 years, have you been haunted by tens of thousands of vengeful spirits in your sleep? Now you know how to cry. When you pushed so many living people into the sea of fire, did you ever hear them cry? Tens of thousands of lives were lost because of your insatiable greed. How innocent were they? Even if you only left behind 10% of the silver, they would be able to survive and would even be deeply grateful to you. Yet you insist on killing them all? As long as one had the slightest bit of conscience, they would not have done such a thing. His Highness still wants to be lenient, but in my opinion, the extermination of 10 families is not enough to infuriate the people. These words were said for them, but it was also said for the family members. Tens of thousands of lives were lost and they still wanted to cry injustice? As family members, they knew very little about this kind of thing. Seeing their shocked and disbelieving eyes, they were too ashamed to face them. Covering their faces with both hands, they knelt on the ground and cried non-stop. It was as if they had lost their minds. Only vague words like, I was wrong, and, I'm sorry, were left in their mouths. Li Suyin was unmoved. What are you waiting for? Take them away and lock them up. Wait for the punishment. Perhaps because they knew the reason, no one said anything. They just fell silent and lost their vitality. Perhaps there was a glimmer of hope at first, but now it had all turned into despair. Tens of thousands of lives, how could they allow them to live? Li Suyin knew that this was only temporary. When they could not stand the environment in the prison, they would explode. At that time, it did not matter if they were close relatives or not. They would resent and curse. They would not care that a large part of the money was actually used on them. At that time, these culprits would really have a taste of their own medicine. After dealing with it, he went back to report. Li Hongyuan nodded. Then he asked him and Yu Zhongqing to submit a letter to be sent to the capital as fast as possible. Then he also wrote his own opinion on the corruption case. He kept the things that Jingwan embezzled, and made a list of the rest. He also wrote down how much the officials had embezzled. Finally, he asked for the emperor's judgment. Not to mention the other things, just the 2 additional things at the back would definitely cause Emperor Qing to have a myocardial infarction. After the myocardial infarction, he even praised him for doing well. Moreover, he would 100% accept Li Hongyuan's opinion on how to deal with it. The son was really good. He was so considerate. Not only did he save his face, he also recovered the loss of the national treasury. Although he always contradicted him in the past, he actually still cared about his father in his heart. It was just that he did not mean what he said. Although it was impossible to get a reply from Emperor Qing within a day or 2, Li Hongyuan could completely predict how he would react. His only reaction was, haha. As for whether the letter submitted by Yu Zhongqing and Li Suyin would cause his blood pressure to soar, it was not within the scope of Li Hongyuan's consideration. But what was certain was that he would not die. That person cherished his life very much. He would not die because of these people. So many officials have been arrested. What about the government affairs of Shannon County and Quanzhou Prefecture? How will they deal with them? Jingwan was a little worried. If there was no one at the top to take charge, there might be trouble below. Once the trouble was out there, it would directly affect the common people. When I was preparing to take action, I had already asked people to gather the accompanying officials in other places in Quanzhou Prefecture. They will arrive tomorrow at the latest. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Those who have been in prison will not be able to come out alive. This matter is set in stone. When the capital receives the letter, they will select officials as soon as possible. Then they will be appointed as soon as possible. If they are transferred from the local area, it will take at most a month. If they are transferred from the capital, it will be even faster. Jingwan nodded. Shannon County is a prosperous place. Just look at these officials and you'll know how lucrative it is. Now that so many important positions have been vacated, I'm afraid the people in the capital will start arguing again. How can the selection of officials be quick? She expressed her doubts. The current minister of the Ministry of Personnel is your grandfather. Although the Ministry of Personnel doesn't have the authority to directly appoint rank 2 and 3 officials, Minister Luo's previous recommendations were all deeply appreciated by that person. Moreover, the mess in Jiangnan right now is definitely related to my brothers. Now that they're still guilty bodies, if they jump up and down at this time, that person will definitely be unhappy. They're not fools, but in the face of benefits they won't give up so easily. Therefore it's highly likely that they'll work on your grandfather. Jingwan smiled. I have worried too much. Grandfather is upright and plain-spoken. He will not be slow. Upright and plain-spoken? Li Hongyuan rubbed his chin. That sly old fox. Although the Luo family wasn't very rich, they still had a certain amount of resources. At least they didn't lack money, so he never cared about money. He was also a scholar official, but compared to other people he was more humane. He had ambitions and it was big enough, but it didn't make people dislike him. It was just that Jingwan's experience in the previous life made him hold a grudge against the Luo family. When Pei clan head heard that Li Hongyuan was assassinated, the person who had always been well cultivated, was furious and directly smashed the cup in his hand, causing the person who reported to him to bleed. Shameful, why didn't you report such a big matter earlier? One must know that that grandson was originally difficult to deal with, and he also knew that the descendant of the previous dynasty's imperial family was in his hands. Even if it had nothing to do with the remnants of the previous dynasty, it could still be related, not to mention that he was related. Pei clan head hated that he wanted to mince all these people and feed them to the dogs. The person who was smashed did not even dare to cover the wound with his hand. Because the assassination failed, the people who participated were all wiped out. The next day the entire city was sealed off. There was not enough time. Am I talking about this? Pei clan head's voice was cold as ice. Such a big matter without reporting it to me. Did you eat a bear's heart and leopard's gall? Completely wiped out? That's not bad. It would be better if they all died. No matter what these people did in the past, no matter what contributions they made to him or Pei clan, now that they had become obstacles, they would be mercilessly abandoned. It would be best if they all died. After calming down a little, Pei clan head did not particularly care. After all, those people simply did not know who they were working for. The number of people who knew of his existence could be counted on one's fingers. Moreover, under normal circumstances, they would act in the name of his son. As for Li Hongyuan's safety, he was not the least bit concerned. Li Hongyuan was very important to him, but if he died like this, it could only mean that Li Hongyuan was incompetent. Thus, it was naturally not worth his energy and effort. Of course, if they met, it would definitely be a different face. Therefore, the reason why Pei clan head was so angry, more than half of it was because those people acted on their own and challenged his authority. Immediately scram back to Chuanzhou Fu and pay attention to the movements of Jin Qinhuang. Regarding the assassination, stop here. Let the people of Chuanzhou Fu stay obediently. If anyone has any problems or acts on their own, don't blame Laofu for being ruthless. Yes, clan head. After they left, Pei clan head sank into deep thought. In reality, ever since he met his grandson, he felt that everything was not going well and not a single thing was satisfactory. It was not that he was controlling others to follow his plans, but it was as if he had sunk into a quagmire and was restrained in every way. It was not clear whether the obstacle was man-made or an accident. After contemplating, Pei clan head felt that he should not continue to wait like this. He roughly understood the current situation in Jiangnan. Later on, when he got older and could no longer have children, he would still stay in the main courtyard for another day and spend the rest of the time in the study room. When the Pei clan head's wife saw the Pei clan head, she was very surprised. However, she guessed that something must have happened. She personally served him tea and asked about his well-being. Then she waited for him to speak. The Pei clan head did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. He asked her to go to the Chuanzhou residence to meet Li Hongyuan and play the emotional card. The Pei clan head was the absolute master in his own backyard. He always meant what he said. If there was something, he would not beat around the bush. He would not consider what they would think. Whatever he said was what it was. Whatever he said they had to do. The Pei clan head's wife had a weak temperament. In fact, if the Pei clan head did not only value his children, but also treated his wife with some respect and did not care about his concubines, she would have been devoured by his concubines long ago. Therefore, on this point she should be grateful to him. How ironic and how ridiculous it was. At this moment, the Pei clan head's wife was in a daze. That was her youngest child. She was also the best-looking and most talented of all her children. Hua Qin had found a good fiancé and she was satisfied. As a mother, she was also happy because she could see that Min Yuhan was really good to Hua Qin. Unfortunately, the heavens were playing tricks on people. Her daughter had faked her death to eliminate the clan, causing her to be heartbroken. She hated the person who destroyed her daughter to the bone, but she was especially concerned about her grandson. She had never taken the initiative to ask about the Pei family, except for Li Hongyuan. She had wanted to see him for a long time. Had the chance finally come? Husband, don't worry. I will do my best. That's good. Leave as soon as possible. Bring Hua Qin along and pick a few more. Do you understand? The Pei clan head's wife was shocked. She could not help but clench her fists. This man actually had such a plan. How could he? Why, don't you understand? The Pei clan head's voice became heavier. The Pei clan head's wife could not help but tremble slightly. I understand. https://11/11807/6653891. TML. Chapter 337. The chief's wife sat in the same place and did not move for a long time, as if she was going to sit until the end of time and pass away. Little all of a sudden, tears rolled down her cheeks. No matter how hard she tried to wipe them away, they could not be wiped clean. The servants were frightened and hurriedly comforted her, but it was useless. One of the older nannies winked at the young maidservant. The young maidservant was also clever and quietly went out. The old madam liked the first young lady the most. With the first young lady around, she always smiled more. Pei Xiuying also came quickly. Her footsteps were somewhat hurried, but she still did not mess up her bearing. Great-grandmother, what's the matter? When the chief's wife saw Pei Xiuying, she suddenly reached out and grabbed her tightly. Pei Xiuying, don't worry, great-grandmother will risk my life to protect you. I will definitely protect you. She was weak all her life. When she lost her beloved daughter, she could only cry silently. She absolutely could not let her great-granddaughter fall into the miserable end of being a chess piece. Pei Xiuying was confused. Great-grandmother, don't cry first. Tell me first what happened, okay? She softly pacified. The chief's wife gradually stopped crying and her expression became more resolute. Pei Xiuying, your great-grandfather asked me to go to Chuanzhou to see Jin Qinhuang and bring you along. His intention could not be clearer. Don't worry, great-grandmother will not allow this kind of thing to happen. Absolutely not. Great-grandmother will find you a good husband. Great-grandmother? Pei Xiuying's voice slightly raised as she interrupted her. Great-grandmother, I already knew about this matter. Great-grandfather told me long ago and I agreed. So you don't need to be like this. Although great-grandfather's temperament is good, he does not allow people to disobey him. You two love each other for a lifetime, don't let Pei Xiuying cause animosity between you two. The chief's wife felt as if she was splashed with a basin of ice water in the middle of winter. It was cold to the bone. It took a long time before she found her words. Did your great-grandfather say something to you or threaten you? Do you know what the relationship between Jin Qinhuang and our family is? Great-grandmother, what are you thinking? Great-grandfather has always doted on me. Why would he threaten me? I'm doing this willingly. The family gave birth to me and raised me. They gave me the best clothes and education. When the family needs me, I'll naturally do it. Great-grandmother should know a thing or two about the current situation of the Pei clan. As the saying goes, no egg can remain intact when the nest is overturned. If Ma Yingying alone could turn the situation around, that would naturally be the best. As for the relationship between Jin Qinhuang and our family, from a nominal point of view, Pei Ying should call him maternal uncle. A few days ago I have seen Jin Qinhuang twice. He looks very similar to great-grandmother. Before meeting Li Hongyuan, Pei Ying was indifferent to this marriage. Perhaps it was purely for the benefit of the family and that ambition that was full of greed. But after meeting him, other than that, she also wanted to conquer that man. The chief's wife only felt a chill. The blood in her body was almost frozen. Looking at this great-granddaughter in front of her who she doted on to the bone, it was the first time she felt so unfamiliar. No matter how righteous she was, she did not miss the ambition in her eyes. In the past, that bright and proud woman was also the one who resembled Pei Xiuying the most. In the end, she was actually this kind of person? Perhaps she was the one who resembled that man the most. Was it that she disguised herself too well, or was it that she was blind that she did not notice it? So in her eyes, her days like this were merely to obtain the so-called respect. Could it be considered to be a lifetime of love with that man? Unconsciously, she had already retracted her hand. She felt that she was very ridiculous. The person who needed her protection, she did not take action and only looked on helplessly. And when she summoned the courage to protect a person, the other party did not need it at all. Perhaps he even felt that she was meddling in other people's business. She was originally a person who never dared to disobey her husband. This time the courage came with difficulty, but it was so easily scattered. Perhaps in the future, there would not be anyone who would make her give birth to such thoughts. She would play her role well in this inner courtyard, be a living bodhisattva without temper. Stretching out her hand for clothes and opening her mouth for food, muddling along and waiting for death, who did not know how to do that? In any case, according to that man's desire for control, she did not need to worry about the inner courtyard. Since that is the case, then you should go back and pack up. At the latest, you should leave tomorrow. Pei Ying felt that there was something wrong with her, but she could not pinpoint the specifics. There was a bit of worry on her face. Great-grandmother, Pei Ying has failed to live up to your good intentions? No, great-grandmother just wants you to be well. Great-grandmother knows that you are a good child. No matter what happens in the future, you have to be well. Even if her heart was cold, after all, she had held her in the palm of her hands for so long. Even if she loved the house, how could there not be any bit of true feelings? Naturally, she would not curse her or hate her. That kind of love and friendship would end here. Pei Ying's face was slightly gloomy. It's Pei Ying's fault. In the end, she was not at the level of clan leader Pei, who was cold-hearted and unscrupulous. All right, go back and pack up. Yes. Clan leader Pei's wife watched as Pei Ying's figure disappeared at the door. I hope you don't regret it for the rest of your life. Not long after Pei Xiaoying left, the twin sisters came. They probably bumped into each other outside. In the past, she might have thought that the two sisters would not use their status as elders to cause trouble for Pei Ying. Now that she thought about it, she was too worried. As the legitimate eldest daughter of the fourth generation, the 3 generations above her doted on her and even had the protection of the head of the family. How could she be at a disadvantage? Even if someone was jealous of her, it would at most be a small fuss. They would definitely not go overboard. Now that she thought about it, in the past, whenever she was in trouble, she would never complain. However, there would always be people who intentionally or unintentionally revealed it to her. Naturally, she would be angry. And every time, Pei Ying would always smile and comfort her, saying that she did not feel wronged. In terms of seniority, they were her aunts. In terms of age, they were younger than her. Moreover, they were just joking and did not have to take it seriously. With such magnanimity and courtesy, this great-grandmother would naturally feel even more distressed. Of course, she would help her vent her anger. Originally, it was only 30%, but she insisted on giving her an 80% punishment. After Pei Ying pleaded for leniency, the punishment became 12%. In this way, this old thing, would take revenge for her. Pei Ying, did not have to do anything and even gained a good reputation. Everyone in the house praised her for being filial, magnanimous, and good-tempered. In reality, they just grasped this old thing's temperament and made use of her again and again. They also had a good sense of propriety. The person involved could not see clearly. Suddenly jumping out of the memory, it was not a normal kind of panic. It was simply chilling. Clan leader Pei's wife panted as if she was about to suffocate. She was very uncomfortable. Seeing that something was wrong, the servant hurried forward to help her breathe. The sisters who had been hesitating when they came in were also frightened and hurried forward. Grandmother, hurry up and get the doctor. Although their grandmother didn't like them very much, she still knew the basic filial piety. Clan leader Pei's wife reached out and grabbed their hands. It's okay. There's no need to call the doctor. She gradually calmed down. Why are you 2 little girls here? The sisters were flattered by such a pleasant expression. The younger sister said hesitantly, we just heard that grandmother seems to. The elder sister quickly pinched her secretly. Go and call your parents over. I will explain the matter to them. If they agree to let you go, I will bring you along. She was only their grandmother, not their parents. Moreover, she could not bring herself to send her granddaughters to someone else's door as a concubine, even if that person was her grandson. Therefore, it was better to explain it to their parents and ask for their opinion. As for whether they wanted to tell these 2 children, it was up to them. As for the other candidates, there were many. Not to mention the legitimate children of concubines, there were even 1 or 2 of her concubine daughters who were of marriageable age. Of course, in terms of seniority, the last candidate was her grandson's aunt. She could not do such a crazy thing. As for the rest, there was nothing to worry about. She did not care about what kind of mood or thoughts one had. She only cared about choosing the beautiful one. Of course, because there was a possibility that she would become her grandson's concubine, she had to consider her temperament. The 2 sisters looked at each other. It was indeed not a small matter. Thinking about it, they actually felt a little excited. Their father was at home during this period of time. Therefore they were quickly invited over. The man was already over 50 years old. He was the first child of Pei clan head's wife. His current wife was the third. The age difference between the two was close to 20 years. The woman looked like a young married woman, but the man? Forget it, there was no need to talk about it. Pei clan head's wife deliberated for a moment and still only invited her son because she was not sure if this daughter-in-law knew about Wan. As the legitimate son of Pei clan head, he was not a good-for-nothing. He knew most of the things about Pei clan. And because of Pei clan head's teachings, their natural disposition was at least 30% similar to Pei clan head's. When he first planned to form a marriage alliance with Jin Qinhuang, he first thought of his own twin daughters. However, Pei clan head pulled Pei Yuing out. He did not dare to disobey his father. Even if he had complaints in his heart, he did not dare to say anything. Now that there was a chance, he naturally had no reason to disagree. Seeing the son's face full of joy and his promise, Pei clan head's wife only had 4 words in her heart, as expected. Then you go and talk to your wife and 2 children. It's best to ask their opinions. Being a concubine is not a glorious thing after all, not to mention it's the imperial family. Mother, you worry too much. At present, it is natural to hide it. In the future, when that nephew ascends the throne, even if the girl from our Pei clan is not the empress, she will at least be one of the 4 imperial concubines. She may even be like little sister in the past and be conferred the title of Imperial Gui Fei. How honorable is that? How could it be a disgraceful thing? These words were taken for granted just like his father. Pei clan head's wife forced a smile. These sons, including the one born by her sister, all respected her. Perhaps they were filial enough, but they would not tell her about big or small matters. They would not ask for her opinion, let alone listen to her. They clearly knew that she was most concerned about the matter of his little sister, but they said it out loud and pierced her heart. Was this really filial? No matter how cold their heart was, it was just like this. Set out tomorrow. Yes, this son will retire. There was nothing wrong with the etiquette. But what was the use of this superficial skill? After leaving, he returned to his own courtyard. Whether it was his wife or his 2 daughters, he did not mention the specifics. He only told them that the person they wanted to meet was Jin Qinhuang. What they had to do was to win his affection and stay by his side. At the same time, it was best to get rid of Pei Yuing. The current Pei clan head looked robust, but he could not deny the fact that he was old and could die at any time. Now was also the time when the brothers were fighting for power. Jin Qinhuang's side was a very crucial chess piece. If his daughter won, the chips in his hands would immediately multiply. Even if the position of the clan head was not his in the end, he would have the ability to compete with the eldest branch. You alone may not be able to compare to Pei Yuing. Your advantage is that you have 2 people in one face. Jin Qinhuang has seen countless beauties, but he may not have seen twin beauties. Men usually have a strong sense of novelty. As a father, he used himself as the standard to teach his daughter how to attract the attention of other men. As the mother of the 2 sisters, the more she heard, the darker her face became. What kind of person did he think his daughter was? Rushing to the door to curry favor and even had 2 daughters together. Was Pei clan an aristocratic family or a brothel? Husband lord. The man turned his head, his eyes rather cold. Prepare clothes and jewelry for the 2 of them. With Pei clan head setting an example, the daughters-in-law of Pei clan's main residence had no right to speak. The more unyielding they were, the earlier they would die. At this moment, the 2 sisters' faces were a bit green and white. They thought that they were gold and jade, but now they had to do this kind of thing. If outsiders knew, how would they have the face to meet people? Perhaps he knew what they were thinking. The man's face became more gloomy. Pei Yuing stayed, and if you can't stay, then find a place to end it. There's no need to come back. You have many brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter if you 2 are more or less. Useless waste. Naturally, there's no need to waste money and food. The 2 sisters looked at him in disbelief. Was this really the gentle and elegant father that they had in mind? However, from his expression, they could only see seriousness. In a flash, their faces were as white as paper. They had always been proud of being Pei clan's daughters, but in the end, in the eyes of their own biological father, they were like dispensable objects. This kind of blow was 10 times, 100 times more painful than Pei Yuing deliberately scheming against them, but in the end they were severely punished. Haven't you always wanted to suppress Pei Yuing? This is the best opportunity. When Prince Jin ascends the throne, you will become the most honorable women of Pei clan. When the clan head sees you, he will have to kneel down. At that time, even if you are angry with me because of today's matter, you can take revenge. After giving a big stick, naturally he also had to give a sweet jujube. Alright, I still have things to do. You two prepare well. When he left, his bearing was enough like his father. Mother. The two sisters were in tears. The woman also couldn't stop wiping her tears. Mother has no choice, you. No matter how much they cried, they couldn't change the final result. If they did as they were told, there might be a way out. The next day, the twin sisters, Pei Yu-ying and 3 other beautiful girls were directly chosen by Pei clan head's wife. They knew nothing about the matter. 6 beautiful girls, after today, perhaps they would walk towards a completely different fate. When the twins looked at Pei Xiaoying, they were no longer so straightforward with jealousy and hatred. There was even some pity in their eyes. So what if she was the most outstanding girl in the Pei family? The few of them standing together were all the same. No one was more noble than the other. Pei Yu-ying looked very indifferent, no different from before, but her heart was not calm. It was not because there were more opponents, she simply didn't put them in her eyes, but because she was placed together with them, it was simply the greatest humiliation to her. However, this was the matter decided by her great-grandfather, she had no right to criticize. As the most considerate and most educated girl, even if it was not her great-grandfather's decision, she should not say anything. She only needed to show her most outstanding side at all times. At the end of the day, this was not something to be proud of, so naturally they couldn't make a big fuss about it. Even the members of the Pei clan didn't know that Pei Yu-ying was going out. When they passed by Min County, although the two clans had not completely fallen out with each other, they were unusually nervous. Previously, Pei Yu-ying had sent a valuable gift back to her maternal family, but they had not returned yet. Min County did not let them return, and Pei clan head also did not allow them to come and pick them up. Obviously, both clans were betting on the other side to bow down first. Pei Yu-ying's wife pulled open the curtain of the carriage and looked in the direction of Min County's old residence. She sighed deeply, gave an order, and continued on the road. As the convoy was sufficiently low-key, it naturally did not attract too much attention. However, before Min Yuhan left, she reminded her brother, the Min family head, that in the near future the Pei family would definitely make a move. Anyone who came from Pei County had to pay attention, especially those carriages with the Pei family's insignia. No matter how inconspicuous they were, they had to inform him beforehand, especially those heading to Chuanzhou Constabulary. As such, Pei Yu-ying's wife and her entourage fell into the eyes of Min County's Min County. Pei Yu-ying's wife could not wait to see Li Hongyuan, but when she thought of her own motive, she seemed to have no words to face him. Therefore, with a conflicted heart, she did not hurry and did not deliberately slow down the speed of her journey. Pei Yu-ying had a residence in Chuanzhou Prefecture, and the people who lived in the main residence were the people who lived there. Out of the 6 ladies, 5 of them had to call him cousin. Min Yuhan was the first to receive the news. Not long after this group of people arrived, he asked someone to inquire a little and guessed the identity of the main personnel. His eyes were cold. That old thing would not change his mind so easily. However, now he really wanted to see what kind of expression that old thing would have when he thought that he would definitely succeed, but in the end it was all for naught. Recently, Min Yuhan's side had not been peaceful. Perhaps it was because of his proposal to Pei Xiaoying, but that grandnephew of his who admired Pei Xiaoying was really smitten by the beauty. He did not care about anything else and did not care about each other's identities. Min Yuhan naturally did not argue with him. As the younger sister, Miss Yuan was naturally worried about her brother and had a good relationship with Pei Xiaoying. However, it did not mean that this lady was completely emotional. She was usually very open-minded, but it did not mean that she was careless. On the contrary, she was actually very sharp in certain matters. For example, she had noticed that something was wrong in this matter. She did not have much contact with Uncle Yuhan, but she could be sure that he was definitely not someone who did not consider the consequences of his actions. Therefore, she did not quarrel and did not make a fuss. She even persuaded her brother and prepared to talk to Uncle Yuhan. Perhaps it was because of Pei Xiaoying, but Min Yuhan actually liked Yuan now. Perhaps she was not outstanding, or perhaps she was not a peerless beauty, but her mind was simple, pure, and beautiful. After interacting with her, he felt that external matters were not as dirty as he expected. This was because when Yuan came to find him, he did not say much and only told her, "Believe me, Uncle Yuhan, Pei Xiaoying is not a good friend. Stay away from her." https://11/118076653895. TML. Chapter 338. No matter how arrogant the Pei family was, and no matter how much the Pei family head's wife wanted to see her grandson, she still had to follow the rules and send him a greeting card. Speaking of which, she didn't even have the honor of being Min Yuhan, much less a grandmother. Min Yuhan had personally brought the greeting card to Li Hongyuan. As long as Li Hongyuan saw the card, he would meet her. Could the Pei family head's wife do it? No, she wasn't even the one who signed the card. As for when they could meet, it would depend on Li Hongyuan's mood. In the current situation, there weren't many people who dared to send a greeting card to Li Hongyuan. Hence, the card would reach Li Hongyuan very quickly. Li Hongyuan took the card and signed it with the Pei family head's personal seal. With just a glance, he threw the card out. It was clearly a group of women. Logically speaking, they should be sending the card to the princess consort. At this time, they were actually playing tricks and bypassing the princess consort to meet him directly. What kind of logic was this? To put it in a small way, it was to avoid Jinqing Wang Fei and achieve their unspeakable goal. After all, things like concubines should be handled by the main wife, but since her own man had agreed, how could she not agree? Hence, as long as Li Hongyuan agreed to let the Pei family's daughter stay, Luo Jingwan's surprise would be in vain. To put it simply, they were looking down on the princess consort and the royal family. It would be fine if they achieved their goal. However, if they didn't and Jingwan insisted on pursuing the matter, the entire Pei family would have to bear the consequences. No one in the Pei family was an official or a noble. They were just ordinary people. It would only add to their crimes. Jingwan naturally saw the post as well. Actually, I've always felt that Patriarch Pei is a very strange person. Logically speaking, he should be able to see the Pei family's current situation clearly. However, he acts as if the Pei family is still the #1 aristocratic family in name. He is confident. No, it should be arrogant. No matter how I look at it, he doesn't seem like a fool. Then what is he relying on? Just like this time. Is he so sure that you will accept the Pei family's daughter? Is he so sure that I will swallow this humiliation? We'll soon find out whether or not he has any chips that will guarantee his victory. However, it's also possible that he's considering others from his own standpoint. As long as there are enough benefits, women are just objects. He probably thinks that it's an unbelievable thing to reject an object because he doesn't want it. A person who can do such a thing must be the stupidest person in the world. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan with a faint smile and a hint of mockery. Your Highness, are you saying that you are stupid? Is this self-awareness? However, according to this man's style, he wouldn't want unnecessary items, but he would hold on to the benefits behind them. It was a typical bandit's logic and also a bandit's style. However, he was her man. Even if her worldview was shattered into pieces, she still felt that there was nothing wrong with him. This has nothing to do with being stupid or not. The main thing is that I have a fierce wife at home, so I fear her like a tiger. If his wife was too powerful, no matter how many benefits he had, he could only stand aside. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. Since she was the one who got the benefits, then it didn't matter if she had a bad reputation. So be it. Since your Highness has said so, I should do something to live up to my reputation. Since the concubines sent themselves to my door, I'll have to work hard to help you deal with them. This kind of thing should be dealt with as a wife. Could it be that Wan originally intended to stand aside and do nothing? His wife didn't have enough awareness. He needed to teach her more. My husband, you're thinking too much. I didn't intend to let you see them at all. Jingwan smiled mysteriously. Any signs that could cause the lunatic to act up had to be extinguished. That's the best. Jingwan was fully in charge of this matter. Naturally, she was prepared to leave them out for a few days. Of course, she wouldn't immediately tell them when to come. Only the unknown could make people anxious. They coveted her husband and tried to destroy her family's happiness. How could she be merciful to these people just because they were related to Li Hongyuan? Jingwan said that she wouldn't be merciful, but she was just leaving them out. This was nothing. Li Hongyuan sighed in his heart. With Wan's personality, as long as outsiders didn't do anything substantial to her, she would probably never be ruthless. If it were someone else, knowing this situation, they would have done something long ago. For example, ruining a person's reputation was the simplest method. Especially since Madame Pei didn't want people to know what they were doing, they should have done everything they could. Wan probably didn't even think about this. Li Hongyuan looked at the lazy Jingwan nestled in his arms and reached out to touch her hair. Forget it, it wasn't like he couldn't protect her. There was no need to force her on such a small matter. A change in temperament was often accompanied by a big change. Li Hongyuan didn't want Jingwan to experience that kind of thing. Once was enough, although it only existed in his memory and Wan didn't know about it. If something similar happened again, he would definitely go crazy and drag the whole world down with him. It was fine as long as his sweetheart was happy. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan were naturally having a good time. However, the Pei clan leader's wife and the 6 Pei clan ladies were not so calm. Including the other 3 ladies, they already knew the purpose of their visit to Chuanzhou Mansion. It was a matter of life and marriage, so it was hard for anyone to remain indifferent. Pei Xiaoying seemed to be the most indifferent, as if this matter had nothing to do with her. However, the twin sisters who knew her very well snorted in disdain. If she really didn't care, she wouldn't have played the zither, chess, calligraphy and painting so frequently. After 2 days of settling down, the 2 of them didn't feel like the world was falling apart. On the contrary, they were determined to succeed. The other 3 also had some determination. 2 of them were concubines and 1 of them was the first wife. The father of the first wife was also a concubine and also had no status in the main residence of the Pei family. Even if they could marry the first wife in the future, even if the man was from an aristocratic family, he would definitely have no power or status in the family. Instead of marrying such a person and living a simple life, it was better to take a gamble. Who knew, they might even be able to rise to the top in a single step and be incomparably glorious. That's right, not every aristocratic family looked down on the nouveau riche, or even the imperial family. Their words might agree, but their thoughts were completely different. Needless to say, the wife of the head of the Pei family, the one she was really anxious about, was her grandson. It was reasonable to say that he should already know about her relationship with the Pei family. However, the invitation sent by the Pei family had not been replied to for a long time. Was he resentful in his heart? Did he simply not want to see the people of the Pei family? Then unexpectedly, she thought of the expression of her daughter when she left the family. The more she thought about it, the more she blamed herself. The more she blamed herself, the more painful it was. So much so that she almost fell ill. However, because she didn't see Li Hongyuan, she held on with one breath. Of course, they were not the only ones who were anxious. There were also the accompanying officials. When they were in Kaming Fu, they were scattered and sent to various places in Jiangnan. At that time, they felt that this was exactly what they wanted and hurriedly rushed over to help clean up and erase the evidence. However, Jin Qinhuang didn't play his cards according to common sense. This kind of action was useless and might even leave behind something that could be used against them. Moreover, after they were recalled, Jin Qinhuang's meaningful gaze always made them feel uneasy. Now that they were temporarily in charge of the government affairs of Shannon County, each and every one of them stretched their skin and didn't dare to make any small movements. They were afraid that the next moment, the blackguard would appear in front of them. This time, there was no more suitable imperial envoy candidate than Jin Qinhuang. Was really true. From top to bottom, which one of them wasn't cleaned up until they were docile? Because the ordinary people were also affected, Jingwan proposed to go out for a stroll. It wasn't to say that it was with great fanfare, but it was also absolutely not low-key. The main thing was to tell the people that the sky didn't fall and the earth didn't sink. Even if something happened, it was still the officials. It had nothing to do with the ordinary people. They should do what they should do. Li Hongyuan didn't have the mind to care about how these people were doing. After a long time, even if it didn't work out when they returned to the capital, they would naturally recover. However, he was very interested in simply accompanying his wife to play. These days, the chief historian of the Great Map was not idle. In this city, there was no problem even if he wasn't needed as a guide. Because he had a special purpose, he naturally didn't go to a more special place. Probably wherever it was bustling, he would go there. Although Jingwan and the others' attire was relatively restrained, but Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyen and the others' attire wasn't restrained at all. They directly wore their official robes and their swords never left their hands. That deterrent force was not a little bit. At first, everyone who saw them hurriedly retreated, fearing that they would bump into them. The class was so distinct. Jingwan secretly sighed in her heart and threw this little emotion aside. She pulled Li Hongyuan to stroll around in high spirits. From the end of this street to the end of that street, it seemed that she had never seen these things before. Looking here, looking there, looking there. Even the stall owners of the small stalls were amiable. Jingwan was actually more approachable. With a bit of deliberate effort, the originally nervous people also gradually relaxed. How much is this? Jingwan had a small doll in her hand. No need, no need. It's this commoner's honor that the princess consort likes this little thing. How can I take the princess consort's money? The stall owner's wife quickly said. Jingwan joked, we don't lack this little bit of money. If we meet someone who looks rich, boss should try his best to rip them off. Even if it's 10 times or 100 times, you wouldn't feel that it's expensive. If you don't take the money, they might think that you're looking down on them. Jingwan was very conscious of being a sucker. The stall owner was a little fearful. Princess consort, this commoner's wife doesn't have any intention of looking down on you. This commoner? The stall owner's wife also had a face of anxiety, wanting to explain. Jingwan waved her hand. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. I know that you don't have that intention. I also don't have that idea. I'm just saying that there might be such people. Since you've met them, you should earn more. The stall owner and his wife were speechless. After stuttering for a while, they finally said, That's bullying. Jingwan smiled. This husband and wife were honest people. When they met that kind of shrewd person, they wouldn't hesitate to rip them off. Jingwan chose a few more dolls and stuffed 2 dolls into Li Hongyuan's hands. Li Hongyuan didn't refuse. He picked it up with 2 fingers and looked at it. He really couldn't see what was good about this toy. The workmanship was rough and the material was inferior. If his wife really liked it, she could just let the servants make it. It was guaranteed that it would be 100 times better than this. Seeing Li Hongyuan's obvious disdain, Jingwan glared at him. Li Hongyuan paused the words at the tip of his tongue, as long as Princess Consort likes it. Jingwan then smiled again and gave him at least you know your place look. Muan, pay up. She turned to the next place. Li Hongyuan shook his head with a little indulgence and followed her. Mu, and handed over 1 tael of silver with a chuckle. Is it enough? It's too much. 20 copper coins is enough. So, the husband and wife were really honest people. Keep it. There's no need to change. A group of corrupt officials have been cleaned up. Both His Highness and Princess Consort are in a good mood. We all feel happy. Eunuch Mu's words were simple and straightforward but had a deeper meaning. Of course, they would do their best to help the Princess Consort achieve her wish. In this way, after a few more times, some things would gradually spread. Turning back, Jingwan looked at Muhan. And he was really a good lackey. Well done. Mama, remember to give our eunuch Mu a big red title when you go back. Yes, this servant will remember. Granny Gong replied, looking as proper as usual. Thank you, Princess Consort, for the reward. Eunuch Mu received it flatteringly. Compared to Mama Gong, he was simply shameless. Several servant girls couldn't help covering their mouths and laughing. N.E. and the others all secretly scolded him in their hearts for being a treacherous villain who only knew how to please the Princess Consort. Well, although they criticized him in their hearts, in essence they absolutely had no objection. When Li Hongyuan and others went out like this, those who wanted to see them or meet them by chance would naturally come out one after another. However, Li Hongyuan was not in the mood to pay attention to them. As soon as he saw someone deliberately approaching, the black-clothed guards, who were the guards, immediately stepped forward and blocked the person. They pulled out their swords by an inch. The meaning could not be more obvious. Immediately retreat, otherwise they would not be polite. After 2 or 3 times, naturally no one would be tactless enough to come forward. At this moment, Jingwan pulled Li Hongyuan to stand in front of the dough figurine stall and asked people to make 2 dough figurines according to them. Such a boring thing, Li Hongyuan patiently accompanied her. From time to time, he tilted his head, slightly lowered his head, and whispered a few words in her ear. The smile on Jingwan's face was unusually bright and beautiful. The joy overflowed from inside and infected the people around her. His Highness and Princess Consort have a good relationship. The old man who made the dough figurines couldn't help sighing with emotion. Li Hongyuan chuckled and Jingwan slightly blushed. That scene, how many people's eyes were mesmerized. However, the atmosphere between the two was harmonious and no one could get in between. In the tea house next to them, the Pei clan head's wife and several Pei clan girls had a panoramic view of all this. The Pei clan head's wife couldn't help but use her handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes and kept saying, so similar, so similar. The focus of Pei Xiaoying and her was naturally different. The relationship between the husband and wife was too good. As a result, it would be more difficult for her to do things in the future. Therefore she subconsciously clenched her fists. Only when she felt a sharp pain in her palm did she slowly release it. Secretly, she told herself that it didn't matter. No matter how good the relationship was, it couldn't withstand misunderstandings and couldn't help but drive a wedge between them. Slowly planning, step by step, she would always be able to achieve her goal. As for the other girls, they couldn't help but blush. It was obvious that they were young girls yearning for love. They probably didn't think that Jin Qinhuang would grow up to be so handsome. It should be known that aristocratic families were often a concentration camp of handsome men and beautiful women. Especially in the current Pei clan, just casually pick one out and there wasn't one who wasn't good-looking. It could be imagined how picky these girls' eyes were. They all unanimously believed that they had never seen a man more handsome than Jin Qinhuang. It was this face that made her originally 70% tempted. Now she was 12% tempted. Pei Xiuying glanced at them. They were really toads wanting to eat swan meat. She didn't put them in her eyes at all. Her gaze landed on the Pei clan head's wife. Great-grandmother, you should relax. No matter what, you should be happy to see me. Pei Xiuying, you're right. I've finally seen you. Almost 30 years, her daughter, almost 30 years, The others returned to their senses. They were confused. They felt that something wasn't right, as if there was something they didn't know. Jingwan held the kneaded dough. Hers was more similar. Sure enough, it was because a certain person's appearance was too good and her temperament was too outstanding that she couldn't knead it. The workmanship is not bad. Wang Fei Nyang overpraises. This commoner is really ashamed. I can't knead even a fraction of Wang Ye and Wang Fei Nyang's charm. It's already not bad. Has the old master already studied? Jingwan asked with a smile. When I was young, I studied for a few years. It's just that I'm relatively stupid and couldn't even pass the exam. Studying doesn't necessarily require one to pass the exam. If everyone is literate, I believe that after graduation, it would be a different scene. Jingwan's voice slowed down a bit. Not only the master of the kneading dough, even Li Hongyuan was startled. It was reasonable to say that he would do everything to help Jingwan achieve her wishes. However, he had to admit that he couldn't make everyone literate. It was impossible even if he devoted his whole life. This wasn't because of his personal reasons, but because the environment didn't allow it. I'm sorry. Jingwan was surprised. She looked up at him and immediately reacted, what's there to be sorry about? I know that this isn't something that can be done with one's own strength. As long as we work hard bit by bit, one day in the future we might be able to achieve it. Even in her previous life, wasn't there also someone who didn't study? Yes. Let's go. Mu and Pei. Mu Gonggong wanted to say, Wang Fei, you don't have to say this every time. This servant will consciously pay. If you say it every time like this, it makes this servant feel very useless. Even lunch was eaten outside. The whole day passed by just like that. Although she didn't do anything meaningful, Jingwan felt very happy. Jingwan, who was in a good mood, finally mercifully replied to Peisher, letting them visit the next morning. After receiving the reply, Peisher's old and young finally breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, after a good preparation, they went to the other courtyard. When they were let in, they each had their own thoughts about seeing Jin Qinhuang. However, when they saw Jingwan holding a pair of scissors trimming the flowers, they couldn't help but stare blankly. What was going on? It was reasonable to say that the invitation to the male and female masters would be separated and sent to their hands separately. They had nothing to do with each other. In order to avoid Jin Qinhuang Fei, they specially used Pei clan head's invitation. https://11/11807/6653900. Chapter 339. At that moment, everyone seemed to be dazzled by Jingwan's smile. However, after regaining their senses, it made people break out in cold sweat. Perhaps because of a guilty conscience, Pei clan head's foreign unconsciously knelt down. She had already knelt down, how could the girl who followed her still stand upright? Since she had already knelt down, the ceremony naturally had to be complete. Greetings to Wang Fei Nyang. The etiquette of aristocratic families was always a little different compared to the common ones. This ceremony of kneeling down was more solemn. Jingwan's eyes flashed. No matter what the other party's reason was, she did not avoid it. This ceremony, she accepted it. The other party was a commoner, she was a Qinhuang Fei. The other party was Jin Qinhuang's maternal grandmother, but nominally, there was no relationship at all. What's more, in a formal occasion she even had to accept the ceremony of her own parents and grandparents, so what did this count as? It was natural for her to accept it. On the contrary, it was the other party's fault for not bowing. Quickly dispense with the ceremony. She gestured to the Yahuan beside her. Qing Zhu immediately came forward with a smile and helped Pei clan heads for an up. Lao Tai Tai, quickly get up. This form of address made the foreign of Pei clan shiver. She rejoiced that she had bowed in greeting so that no one could pick out the mistake. If Jin Qinhuang Fei knew of their purpose in coming, any little mistake could be used by the other party as a pretext to make a fuss. Before seeing Jin Qinhuang, a casual disrespectful hat would make them unable to bear the consequences. The Yahuan moved over an embroidered stool, a short table, and prepared fruits and refreshments. The 3 tables were filled to the brim and there was no repetition. Sit. As if seeing the other party's apprehension, be casual in private, Pei Lao Tai Tai does not need to care about this. Her flowers had not yet been cultivated, how could she sit? Seeing Jingwan's insistence, Pei clan heads foreign nodded, many thanks to Wang Fei Yang. She took the lead and the girls behind naturally followed. Jingwan's gaze landed on Pei Xiaoying and the others. She praised, it is said that the Pei family produces beauties. Looking at them today it is indeed so. Previously when I was traveling from Chongzhou to Chuanzhou, I saw this young lady from the Pei family on the ship. She could be said to be a celestial being. Looking at the others today they are not inferior by much. The princess consort is overpraising them. They are just little girls who have never seen the world, how could they compare to the princess consort's grace? Madame Pei gazed at Jingwan with a faint smile, trying not to show any other emotions. This sentence was meant to be a compliment, but after a little bit of observation, one would find that it was not an exaggeration. In terms of bearing, even Ma Yingying, who had spent countless efforts to cultivate, seemed to be inferior. Regarding today's matter he felt more and more uncertain. You're born with good conditions. As for the rest you just need to take care of yourself. Therefore Jingwan wasn't modest at all in response to the compliment. However, regarding the fact that Pei Xiaoying had already met Jin Qinhuang Fei, the other girls were a little unsettled. That meant that Jin Qinhuang might have also met her, which would certainly have a greater advantage over them. Jingwan turned to trim the flowers again while chatting with them. They didn't say what they came for, so Jingwan naturally wasn't anxious at all. She calmly sat on the fishing platform. If you have the ability you can keep holding it in and not say it. Jingwan would just treat it as a group of people chatting with her to pass the time. In any case she had nothing to do so she could afford to waste time. The impatience of the Pei family was even more intense than before when they couldn't get any news. In comparison Jingwan's leisure was somewhat excessive. Moreover no one treated guests like her. However with their status, it seemed that they didn't have the right to speak at all. To put it nicely, Jin Qinhuang Fei didn't regard them as outsiders. To put it bluntly, Jin Qinhuang simply didn't take them seriously. One might ask, were they very familiar with Jingwan? Therefore in their view it could only be the latter. But in fact they didn't know her at all. This was the first time they visited. Even if Pei family had no official position or nobility, but the title of the number one noble family was still attached to their heads. Those who were related to Pei family were definitely not few in number in the officialdom. No matter what, they had to give some face. When they came in and saw Jin Qinhuang Fei they felt that this whole matter was strange. Even if she had seen Jin Qinhuang Fei's invitation and saw the signature, she should have avoided it. Unless she knew from the beginning that the person Pei Shi came to visit was a female, and perhaps even knew the purpose. Understanding this point they felt that Jin Qinhuang Fei really had good self-restraint. If it was an ordinary person, even if they didn't directly use a stick to drive people away, they wouldn't have a good expression. Then what was Jin Qinhuang Fei's attitude in this? He directly threw the person for his Wang Fei to meet. Did it mean that he refused? The reason why he didn't completely shut the door was because of that bit of blood relationship? He didn't even see his own maternal grandmother, was it that he didn't care about this blood relationship? Pei clan head Foreign's temperament might be a bit weak, but her IQ was still on the line. Thinking of this, her heart became more and more anxious, afraid that Li Hongyuan wouldn't even see her once. As for the mission, and whatnot, it was all thrown to the side. In the end she couldn't hold back. Has Wang Fei Yang heard Wang Ye talk about Pei Shi? Jingwan's hand paused and she turned her head. What is Lao Tai Tai referring to? Pei clan head Foreign endured, but in the end she couldn't hold back. Wang Ye's birth mother is this commoner's youngest daughter. Pei Shi's 6 young ladies except for Pei Yuing only now knew about this. It couldn't be said that they weren't surprised. So Jin Qinhuang was their cousin? Suddenly their eyes fell on Pei Yuing. Their group of cousins was just right. You, a niece sitting here, what do you want to do? It's fine if you don't want face, but Jin Qinhuang still wants face. Of course they wouldn't think that this was arranged by their own grandfather. They would only think that Pei Yuing had deliberately planned this. Jingwan nodded, this matter is known. After all, Pei clan head once used such a special method to invite us. The impression can't be not deep. Pei clan head Foreign opened her mouth, but didn't know how to respond. Because she didn't know about this matter at all. Pinching her handkerchief, her entire person appeared anxious and uneasy. In the end she could only directly say what she wanted to say the most. Can this commoner see Wang Ye? This is the reason why you sent the invitation in the name of Pei clan head? Jingwan meaningfully looked at the 6 young ladies of Pei Shi. Lao Tai Tai's mood is understandable, but I don't know how Lao Tai Tai sees me. Giving the invitation to me knowing this layer of relationship, Would she still not let you see Wang Ye? Pei clan head foreign was a bit speechless. It was their thoughts that were dirty. Jingwan smiled, but this smile didn't reach her eyes. Turning around, she continued to unhurriedly trim her flowers. Wang Ye is not here, Lao Tai Tai might as well come another day. Hearing Jingwan send them off, Pei clan head foreign was somewhat at a loss and became more and more at a loss. Pei Xiaoying naturally knew her great-grandmother's temperament. She had always brooded over the matters of the past. As long as it involved something related, it was easy for her to panic and not know how to deal with it. She didn't have the least bit of the attitude that an aristocratic family's matriarch should have. In reality, compared to the matriarchs of other aristocratic families, her own great-grandmother was actually a bit lacking. Whether it was ability or skill, she was lacking. Other than her natural temperament, the most important thing was that her great-grandfather was too powerful. If this continued, don't talk about achieving the goal, it could make the relationship even more strained. Pei Xiaoying stood up. Wang Feinyang, great-grandmother, is Wang Ye's maternal grandmother. Aren't you afraid that Wang Ye will be angry? Jingwan said, the entire capital knows that Jin Wang Ye's birth mother, the imperial Gui Fei of that year, was an unknown orphan who was deeply loved by the emperor. As long as the palace was there, an exception was made and she was conferred the title of Imperial Gui Fei. Does she have a relationship with Jiangnan's #1 aristocratic family? Wang Ye is now 23 years old. In the capital, there has never been a so-called maternal family. It's not that great-grandfather and great-grandmother don't care about Wang Ye. Several grandfathers also miss Wang Ye and have been paying attention to him these past few years. It's just that for some reason they— Enough, Jingwan rudely interrupted her. When Qiyuan was first established, Pei clan was lofty and unwilling to assist the new ruler. They stayed away from the court and didn't want to have any relationship with the imperial family. This was your position, the rules set by your Pei clan ancestors. Since you can disregard the familial ties of your own flesh and blood for this broken rule, then please remain lofty to the end. The rules have been set, but now you're here. What is the meaning of this? Wang Ye is a descendant of the heavenly crown. Is it something that you can recognize or not recognize? What kind of people are you? As she was connected to Li Hongyuan's heart, she knew that no matter how many people coveted him, he wouldn't have anyone else. Therefore, although Jingwan felt uncomfortable with these demons and monsters, as long as they didn't come knocking on her door, she wouldn't care. However, when it came to Li Hongyuan, she truly felt sorry for him. It would be fine if Pei clan was sincere to him, but in reality she only wanted to make use of him. When she couldn't achieve her goal, she began to scheme. What was the point of having such a group of so-called family members? It would be better if they were all dead. They probably didn't expect her to suddenly flip out, so everyone was a little frightened. However, Pei Xiaoying had been taught by the Pei clan head in certain aspects, so she didn't have stage fright. She looked straight at Jingwan and said, "There are some things that your highness can't decide. Before I left, great-grandfather gave me something that I need to present to Wang Ye personally." "Is that so? Alright, then let Wang Ye personally say it. Just for the sake of old lady." In the entire Pei clan, the only one who truly cared about her husband was this person. "Go see if Wang Ye has returned. If he has returned, ask Wang Ye to come over." Did Li Hongyuan go out? Naturally he didn't. However, it was true that he had guests. Pei clan's people came here and Min Yuhan also arrived. Although he knew that Jin Qinhuang wouldn't suffer a loss, he still couldn't help but worry. He couldn't sit still at home and directly paid a visit. In Li Hongyuan's view, his wife was more than enough to send those people away. Now he needed to go out himself. That Pei clan old lady seems to simply want to see Wang Ye. I think Wang Fei's heart was moved. Gong Mama explained. She's just soft-hearted. In Li Hongyuan's view, that so-called maternal grandmother was sincere or fake. Whether she was sad or hurt, it had nothing to do with him. However, since his wife wanted him to see her, then let him see her. Li Hongyuan got up and said to Min Yuhan, "Do as you wish. Wang Ye, can this commoner also go and take a look? That Pei clan old lady is also considered an elder." Li Hongyuan glanced at him. "Do as you wish." Jin Qinhuang appeared quickly. Everyone knew whether he had gone out or not. In fact, everyone was well aware. However, Min Yuhan didn't appear with him and temporarily disappeared. Li Hongyuan also didn't pay attention to him. Hei Mei and Bai Xiao brought a chair for Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan lifted his robe and sat down directly. Everyone greeted him. Li Hongyuan waved his hand perfunctorily. "All right. You want to see Ben Wang? Now that you've seen me, quickly say what you want to say." Looking at Li Hongyuan at such a close distance, the Pei clan head's wife was simply dazed for a moment. She stared at him blankly but only a few steps away. She reached out her trembling hand as if she wanted to touch him. However, when she met Li Hongyuan's cold and emotionless gaze, she seemed to sober up a little and trembled as she withdrew her hand. However, her tears couldn't stop rolling down. She looked like she wanted to stop it, but the more she tried, the more powerless she was. Unfortunately, even so, Li Hongyuan still didn't have the slightest bit of emotional fluctuation. Jingwan looked carefully. Her husband and the Pei clan head's wife looked very similar. It was just that one was old and the other was in his prime. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell. The most obvious thing was the eyes. However, the charm in the eyes was as different as heaven and earth. It was said that two people who were exactly the same, one's eyes could be weak and helpless, while the other's eyes could be firm and cold. The feeling they gave people was as different as heaven and earth. After taking a few more glances, she felt her interest waning. If it was someone else, Jingwan might have sympathized with them. But if it was someone from the Pei family, she was sorry. Right now, her heart was like a rock. She couldn't soften even if she wanted to. Turning her head, she cut another branch with a snap. Come, send the guests out. Li Hongyuan was not interested in wasting time like this. The Pei clan head's wife felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She cried even more uncontrollably, "Mommy, mommy, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." She looked like she was about to die. The Pei clan's maidens rushed forward to support her. They poured water for her and tried to calm her down. However, Li Hongyuan, Jingwan, and their subordinates looked on coldly. "Your Highness's heart is too cold. Great-grandmother has been blaming you all these years. She often washes her face with tears." Pei Yingying frowned and looked at Li Hongyuan disapprovingly. She had a fearless aura. It was as if she dared to face anything for her great-grandmother. Li Hongyuan looked at her. She didn't give in to his gaze. However, from Jingwan's point of view, she could see Pei Yingying slightly adjust her standing posture. She thought about it. If she was in Li Hongyuan's position, she should be able to see her most perfect side. If it were other men, they would most likely be attracted by her fearless and peerless beauty. Then they would hook up and roll together. Jingwan clicked her tongue in her heart. It could only be said that the fallen flower was interested in the heartless brook. Moreover, what kind of person was Li Hongyuan? He could be seduced by such means. As expected, jumping clown. Li Hongyuan's voice was as cold as ice. He looked at Pei Yingying as if he was looking at a dead person. Pei Yingying's body trembled. All of her aura collapsed. She was still the same person. Her posture didn't change much. However, it felt like she was in a difficult situation. This was the result of being fearless in front of the King of Hell. Pei clan's foreign kept looking at Li Hongyuan. In the end, she forcibly supported herself and didn't fall down. Looking at her great-granddaughter who was completely suppressed by Li Hongyuan, her heart couldn't bear it. She shakily reached out to hold Pei Yingying's hand. Pei Yingying held her hand and turned around. She seemed to naturally bend over. "Great-grandmother, how are you?" Seeing that Pei Yingying was concerned about her, but it was pitifully little. She was using this opportunity to get rid of her awkward situation. Although her heart was already cold towards this great-granddaughter at this time, her heart couldn't help but twitch in pain. However, she was very sober now. For the sake of her grandson's reputation, she absolutely couldn't fall down here. She forced herself to stand up. "Everything is this commoner's fault. Today I have disturbed Wang Ye and Wang Fei. I will take my leave." Leave? How could Pei Yingying leave? She had already realized that Jin Qin Wang wasn't a person who could be captivated by beauty. But the more it was like this, the more she wanted to conquer him. However, she had already left a bad impression on him. If she wanted to go further, she must first stay. "Great-grandmother, don't be anxious. Great-grandfather has a gift for Wang Ye. Wang Ye might as well take a look." At this moment, Jingwan's impression of this beauty completely fell to the bottom. As long as it was a discerning person, they could see that her great-grandmother wasn't good. For her own purpose, she could still forcibly waste her time here. According to her understanding, Pei clan's foreign loved this great-granddaughter very much. She really had the heart of a wolf and the lungs of a dog. She was worse than a beast. She really was like that old thing Pei clan's foreign, selfish and self-centered. "Mama, send someone to invite the Fu's doctor to come over and examine old lady." Li Hongyuan glanced at his wife and roughly understood her meaning. This gift might be old Pei's conceded trump card. He slightly raised his chin and gestured. Mu Gonggong stepped forward and carefully took a small palm-sized box that Pei Yingying took out from her sleeve. It wasn't that he was afraid of touching the girl's hand. His expression was that he was afraid of touching something dirty. Pei Yingying withdrew her hand and clenched it in her sleeve. Whether it was Jingwan asking someone to invite the doctor or Mu Gonggong's action, it was like slapping her face. She had never felt so ashamed and indignant. Then the other hand that was originally held by her great-grandmother was released. Without looking, Pei Yingying seemed to be able to feel her great-grandmother's disappointment. But she gritted her teeth and held on. She told herself that she couldn't show her cowardice, absolutely couldn't show her cowardice. From beginning to end, she slightly raised her chin and maintained her dignity and pride, as if to tell everyone that she was right. https://11/118076653909. Mobile edition. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.